So I think is there three of you at the moment on the call? How many are you expecting?
We're expecting at least two more,
Okay, no problem.
probably more, but the two presenters.
Okay.
Oh, I see
There's somebody coming in. Christina coming in. Hi, Christina.
there. Christina is
Hi.
one of our presenters, so there's
Fantastic. And you got one more to go. Is that right? One more presenter.
yes.
Great. Does anyone know if your fellow presenter is trying to get in?
Yes, I
Okay.
see him now. At least his name. I don't know. Soleil, are you able to turn your video and audio on?
Yep.
Brilliant. There we go.
Just wait for is Christina there?
Yes,
Yeah.
Christina's with us.
Awesome.
So do we have everybody now who's presenting? Fantastic. So I'm just going to run through a few things before we kick off, if that's all right. So first of all, a big welcome to the semi-final of Public Service Data Challenge. Congratulations to you, Team 5, for getting to this stage. I'm Siobhan Bonita. I'm the Global Government Forum's moderator. And it's my job really today just to keep us all to time because we've got a lot of teams and we want to make sure everybody gets the same amount of time to make sure it's a fair process. So on that, once we say go, that, I invite you to start your presentation, you will have up to 10 minutes for your pitch. I will be very strict on that. So whoever's talking at the 9-minute point, I will gently come in and give you a 1-minute warning. So it's just to give you a heads up that that will happen. Once you've done your presentation, the judges, we've got a fantastic panel of judges there you can see sat in the room. They are ready and waiting to listen to your pitch. Once you've spoken, they will talk for up to 15 minutes. They will put questions to you as a team. So just to say, if those who aren't presenting, once you start, turn your cameras off. When we get to the question section with the judges, feel free to all of you to put your cameras back on so that we can see all of you. You're free to present in your preferred language. And just to say, on your device, there is an interpretation button at the bottom. So if you would like to select English or French, we have simultaneous translation available today. So please feel free to do that. A plea from me and the translators, if you could speak clearly, that would be fantastic. I know you only have 10 minutes, but try and speak not too fast so our translators are able to keep up. You're already sharing your slides. I'm just going to check the judges are ready. I think they are good to go. So on that note, I'm going to invite you to begin your presentation. Good luck from me and over to you.
Bonjour, mon nom est Cassoulet. Christina et moi allons présenter un outil pour fournir des meilleurs
Hello,
services.
my name is Cassidy. Christina and myself are going to present a tool for homeless people. It is difficult for homeless people to find services because there's no centralized platform that would indicate where and whether resources are available. There's an organization called Dans la Rue that brings food and clothes to homeless people in Montreal. And one day,
He was in so much pain that he had a hard time holding the hot dog he ordered. Despite this, he did not trust the system to help him because he had many unproductive encounters with overburdened staff. By enhancing service availability through data-driven decision-making, we will alleviate this mental strain and give Canadians experiencing homelessness the peace of mind to address their own needs with greater clarity and focus. Sadly, he is not alone. StatScan survey revealed that 11% of households had experienced some form of homelessness during their lifetime, with 2% having experienced absolute homelessness, meaning sleeping in a public place or in an encampment. It's crucial to recognize that nobody chooses to be homeless. Factors leading to homelessness includes family breakdown, unresolved mental and addiction issues, and financial hardships. There's an urgent need to address homelessness as the numbers are getting alarming. According to StatsCan, absolute homelessness increased by 88% from 2018 to 2022, and shelter occupancy rates have reached critical levels. However, StatsCan is not the only party collecting, managing, and using that data. Being the point of contact with people experiencing homelessness, shelters collect data about their clients and operations. Due to the sensitivity of personal data, there is an expectation of trust. Shelters use their own data collection system, Canada's Homeless Individual Family Information System, or HIFIS, or other regional systems. They use that data to draft reports as a requirement to obtain financing from donors. But since they lack analytical expertise, most do not leverage the data to improve services. Infrastructure Canada maintains HIFIS, which tracks shelter data. It uses the data, however imperfect, to implement targeted programs. Finally, we conducted interviews with people experiencing homelessness, who told us that they mostly get information about services through social media, including Twitter and Facebook. However, this vast amount of information only serves retrospective purposes. We want to add value to the data by empowering shelters to easily analyze that data and make forward-thinking decisions that will improve the lives of Canadians experiencing homelessness. We will provide a secure repository for shelter data by storing information on an aggregate level that will not include individual data, and implementing homomorphic encryption, a cutting-edge encryption method used by hospitals to safeguard privacy. Broadly speaking, our solution will provide inventory management for tracking availability in real time, promote the sharing of resources between shelters, automate the generation of reports to help overburden staff, forecast surges in demand to make smarter purchases, and send automated AI-generated messages about available resources to people experiencing homelessness. I will now pass the presentation on to my colleague Christina, who will go through our mockup.
Merci, Cassidy. Bonjour tout le monde. So in the next few slides, I'll show a mock-up of our solution. So for this mock-up, we use Toronto's daily occupancy and capacity data, which is publicly available on their website. And I just want to stress that we're using City of Toronto data as a proxy, namely because they have awesome open data, but ultimately our goal is to scale this up. So just to reiterate, our users will be shelter staff. So on this screen, you can see the home screen for our tool with the 3 pillars that Kosole just mentioned. So when I log in as a shelter, I can see information and data that's relevant to me only as a service provider. So as the shelter staff, if I click on inventory management, for example, I'm brought to this page where I can select my inventory category from a list of goods and services like clothing, food, counseling. In this case, I have chosen bed availability as my category. And at the bottom left, I can see my capacity for that day and the total number of occupied beds and total unoccupied beds for that day. So that gives me an idea of available inventory. To the right of that, I can see nearest available shelters sorted by least demand. And also there's a visual map there with the nearest available shelters. So I can help refer clients if my shelter is at full capacity, for example. If I click on the second tile, if you recall, which was usage analysis, as the shelter, I can see my data visualized. So in this case, I'm looking at occupancy versus capacity data for the past 7 days, and I can see that my shelter was at or near full capacity for that week. If I want a broader picture of things, I can look at my usage for the past 5 months, and that gives me a better idea of trends month by month. In the third tile, third and final tile, which is forecasting, our team plans to build a machine learning model that will predict demand, aka occupancy rates for a given date or given time frame in the future. So in this case, as the shelter, I've chosen to look at my predicted demand for May 8th to May 11th in the future, as you can see on the little calendar there. And then our tool will generate a graph, as you can see on the slide, where it will give the shelter insights. For example, like overcapacity is predicted for May 11th. And then as the shelter staff, that gives me an idea that I should plan and allocate resources. And we plan to do this prediction by merging our main occupancy data set with potential forecasting variables like weather, which is a big one. The final piece of our solution is the outbound messaging, or the automated generation of tweets or X's, or whatever they're called now. So our tool will generate messages like, for example, on May 9th, we expect to have 4 beds available. So that's very useful information that the shelter will be able to communicate to their clients, and it will save them time, and it will make it super easy for them. And for our next steps, so we plan to continue working with Toronto's open data for the prototype of our tool, and then we'll target more complicated cases and branch out to different resource types like food and clothing. And all of that, keeping in mind our end goal of using HIFIS data, which is real-time, very rich and available, but maybe not as well and fully utilized. So we'll start with what's easy and then scale up from there. So with that, j'aimerais redonner la parole à Cassolé pour conclure notre
And now I'd
présentation.
like to give the floor back to Cassolé for the conclusion.
Christina. So shelters will
Thank
play a
you,
critical
Christina.
role in collecting accurate and timely data. However, there are barriers to collecting that data. Collecting and submitting data can be resource intensive for shelters, as they already have obligations to input data into systems like HIFIS. To mitigate this, infrastructure will, with shelters' consent, collaborate with existing teams, eliminating the need for redundant data collection. Shelters may also struggle with navigating complex data-heavy platforms. Our solution offers intuitive, easy-to-use analytical and predictive tools designed to assist shelters in helping Canadians. And finally, shelters may be wary of entrusting data to third parties. To address this concern, we'll emphasize data protection and stewardship. Nous voulons aider nos utilisateurs des refuges à améliorer la
We want to
présentation.
help shelter users to improve the service offered. We want to reduce the barriers for homeless people, and we want to facilitate the making of policies. But above all, don't forget the faces and the stories behind the statistics. Homelessness is not just a figure, it's a reality for thousands of Canadians. The more it takes time for us to act, the deeper the wounds and the scars of homelessness will become for our communities.
Let us stand together, united in our commitment to create a Canada where everyone has a place to call home. The time for action is now. Thank you
Merci.
for listening to the presentation. This was a real example of teamwork making the dream work. Ceci était un travail d'équipe et un effort interdépartemental. Je remercie tous mes collègues.
This
avec
is a
qui nous-
great example of teamwork making the dream work. I'd like to thank all my colleagues that I work with.
Invite everybody to put their cameras on, and you can stop sharing your screen in a moment. Thank you so much. Thanks for that great presentation. I'm going to come straight over to the judges. Who would like to pose the first question to the team?
Okay,
Let's see,
great
shall we come?
presentation. Thank
Yeah,
you so
Erica,
much.
thanks.
Hi. You can hear me. Okay, great presentation. Thank you so much. I am very intrigued, actually, given the current homelessness on the rise. We're not unfamiliar with that challenge. I'm wondering what kind of data sets have you looked at integrating to present that? I think there's a dashboard that was presented in the beginning of the presentation. And other than the shelter's information, have you looked at other data sets outside of the shelter? That's my first question. The second question is, I'm wondering if you see or explore the similarities between hotel resourcing management tools in that industry in terms of having a big chain like Hilton or Marriott managing their capacity, food, etc. Have you looked into that kind of industry space for comparison. Thanks.
Thank you. Who would like to take that question?
I can take the first part.
Okay.
So I think the graph you were referring to probably in the first or second slide. So that's coming from the Toronto's daily shelter and overnight occupancy and capacity data, like I was mentioning, and that's the data that we use for our mockups as well, and all the other graphs that you've seen in this presentation. And yeah, the data is very granular. It's collected every day at 4 a.m. So it's not real time, but fairly close to that. And we've also looked, the province of Alberta also has a lot of open data and lots of historical data that we can definitely use. They have data all the way back to 2013, so more than 10 years worth of data that we can analyze and use in our tool.
Thanks, Christina. Would anyone else like to come in on that question?
For
hospi-
oh, excuse-moi, for the hotel question, it's actually, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? So as Christina mentioned, our solution is an inventory management system. Hotels already use inventory management systems, so it would actually look, that's actually a really good comparison. We really expect it to look similar to what a hotel may do in order to connect different shelters in different cities. So we can, yeah, so this is absolutely true.
Thank you. Judges, I'm going to come back to you. Elise, yes.
Thank you. So just a couple of quick questions. Merci beaucoup pour la présentation. C'était très bien fait, puis c'est agréable d'entendre un
Thank you
petit peu
very
de
much for this presentation. It was really nice. And thank you, Cassoli, for speaking French. That was really nice as well. First question is in French. You're talking about data source and open data sources, but I was wondering if in your model forecasting model, do you add things such as the weather forecast? Because I feel like this would have an impact on the occupancy.
And the second one is more about the data standard. The how do you reconcile these data as you go forward? What do you see that as a challenge to move out of the Toronto? You mentioned Alberta, Christina, but I expect that your plans are to cover all major cities going forward. So what would get in the way of scaling?
Who would like to jump in on the two parts of that question? Christina Gasol, who's coming in?
I can, je m'excuse, je vais répondre en anglais si c'est OK. For the prediction part, so yes, for sure, we're definitely going to do a deeper dive into the different forecasting variables. So of course, weather, like I said, is a big one, but there's other indicators like substance abuse rates and mental health indicators. There's Canadian Index of Multiple Deprivation, which is kind of like an amalgamated indicator index of situational vulnerability. So all of those indicators will definitely look at them closely and see which ones correlate with homelessness the most.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in? Yes.
Et pour la standardisation des données,
As for data standardization, we are going to use HIFIS. HIFIS is a data collection or set of data that already exists that some shelters are already using. So the data on HIFIS are already standardized. So we're going to be using the data available on HIFIS. The goal of our project is to use this data to help homeless people, because right now this data is only in Canada on a database, but it's only used for us, for policy making. But we believe that it can also be useful for shelters to offer better services to Canadian people. That is our goal. That's our project. Our project is really about, we already have the inventory management system. HIFIS already exists and it contains data already. It's all about integrating this data to create a more suitable solution for homeless people.
Coming back to you, who would like to put the next question? Yes, Dominic. Or Julie, sorry. Julie, and then Dominic.
Pas de problème, merci beaucoup. Très bonne présentation. Juste peut-être deux petites questions.
Very good presentation. Just one question. You talked about the necessity to convince users Have any ideas of how to start doing that? How you can convince them?
Regarding you're talking about housing. Maybe may have missed that from your presentation. Do you have the platform to be able and the technology to be housing all that data in real time? Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Who would like to take that question? Any member of the team can talk as well.
Yep.
Kate, do you want to come
Hi,
in?
everyone. My name is Kate Burnett Isaacs. I'm the Director of Data Science at Infrastructure Canada. So when it comes to both the platform as well as the usability and encouraging and working with shelters, as mentioned before, we are baselining and building off the HIFIS system and the work that Infrastructure Canada already does with outreach to shelters. So currently, we are scoping as a department a new version of HIFIS that also includes further engagement and outreach with shelters. We are already working with shelters to better utilize and increase their analytical capacity with the current version of HIFIS. And so our goal with this project is to provide the blueprints, the lessons learned, and the setup for that new version of the entire inventory, as well as the relationship with the shelters.
Thanks, Kate. Dominic, you had a question as well.
Yes, thank you. Great pitch. Thank you very much for this. It was an exciting one to listen to, and lots of questions. I'll try to focus them. I'll pick two, maybe. One bit of a follow-up, but you already have a partnering shelter secured, like someone that you're working with to do this initial step, would be question one. And question two is, in the scope of the initiative here, there's lots on the table, lots of really cool, interesting use cases and concepts. Is the machine learning and the prediction model part of it all? Like, if that doesn't happen, can we still succeed with achieving helping the shelters with knowing how many beds and what's available locally? Or is that an add-on? Because of course, here I'm seeing you've got automated tweets coming out of this. That's automated decision-making, algorithmic impact assessments. There's lots to go around with that. So I just want to see, in your mind, is there a scope that's your MVP and some add-ons? Or is the MVP the whole thing you presented here today? MVP being minimal viable product, of course.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yes.
Dominic. Christina, do you want to take the first bit, or are you taking all of it?
Yes, I'll take the second part, I guess, the machine learning part, predictive forecasting part. For sure, we can see it as an add-on. We can do without it, but I think there's definitely a lot of value in it. But without it, of course, all the other two tiles, like the inventory management and data analytics part of it, for sure that will bring great value as well.
Thank you. Did anyone want to continue with that answer, or also talk about the partnering shelter?
I'll jump in on the partnering. So the idea, the platform, and the mock-up itself, and the next steps are done in partnership with the Infrastructure Canada's community outreach team, who are providing the requirements that we use to make this mock-up on a regular basis. So they are in constant contact with the shelters. We are partnering with them to understand what is needed. And as I've mentioned, as that ongoing work with shelters is happening right now, we're going to use that feedback to inform our mock-up and continue moving forward. So we are very much taking a user-centric approach through the support of Infrastructure Canada.
Thanks, Kate. Yes, I'm going to come to Gabrielle. You've got a question.
Merci beaucoup. Puis, merci pour la présentation.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I'd like also to mention, just like Elise said, I appreciate the fact that you used both official languages.
Proposal of information. I was wondering if you, around sensitive women's shelter information and locations. How are you thinking about the aggregation of information given the sensitivities of some of the information that you have to deal with? So what are you bringing together? Are you doing data exclusion to sort of hide those more sensitive sets, or are you able to sort of, it's not necessarily you have to anonymize it, I don't think, but just how are you sort of bringing those different data sets together? Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to take that question on the sensitive data?
I can take that question. So data sensitivity, first and foremost, we are looking to use anonymized data only. Yes, we are looking to get rather granular in order to provide support and the information that shelters needed. But this is also why we are proposing in our solution to have an input privacy aspect to this solution. And so really what we want to do is we want to first build trust with the shelters, and secondly, ensure that their information, and particularly sensitive information, as you provide the example with women's shelters, is protected. And so this is where we will be experimenting with homomorphic encryption to ensure that the information is protected, and yet we can still utilize the aggregate and analytical information.
Can I have a quick follow-up to that? Just, are you also looking at having the shelters authenticate? Just so I'm trying to think about, you know, like them getting and receiving all of that aggregated information. Are you coming in and having them authenticate to access the data that you're sharing out?
Yes.
So, yep. Yes, as Christina presented in the mock-up, the goal is that you as a shelter will have an interface that belongs to you. Yes, there will be information in surrounding areas. Of course, consent of partnering shelters is necessary in order to pull this off. But the goal would be the platform itself would authenticate you as a shelter and show you only information that you have access to, which is, the goal is to have more access than what is currently available now, which is very little, but to still ensure that you have the need to know on the information that you're viewing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions from our judges before we... Yes, Wesley.
Sorry, it's more a comment. Talking about homomorphic encryption and all that kind of stuff raises the hair on the back of my neck, because that tells me you're collecting very sensitive information. And if that's the case, I think you got to be very careful with social acceptability. I'd hate to see people say, I'm not going to that shelter because they're going to collect my information and share it someplace. So it could actually have a negative impact. So social acceptability of the use of this data, I think, is extremely important. And so therefore comms plan and all that kind of stuff, and transparency.
I can see lots of members of the team nodding. Just anyone want to say how you thought about those kind of issues before we close?
So I mentioned currently work is going on between Infrastructure Canada as well as the communities and the shelters themselves to build that trust. And this is where it is currently a pain point and a struggle when it comes to sharing data, because this is one of the goals of the futures of HIFIS. And so our goal with input privacy measures is to help build that trust and to encourage shelters to share their information.
Fantastic. I think we are at the end of our time there. Dominic, was that your hand up? Did you want to come in?
Yeah, if I can, just one last question, and pardon my ignorance on this, just going back to the concept of the tweet. The end user of those tweets, is it the partner, the neighboring shelters, or the municipal governments, or are they actually targeted to the homeless?
Yes, thank you, to the homeless. So like Priscilla mentioned, we did talk to people experiencing homelessness, and the main methods or channels that they consume their information is through social media posts. So basically we're trying to help shelters help people experiencing homelessness and make it easier for them by generating those social media posts automatically.
Okay. Thank you, équipe 5. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for that great presentation. I am going to invite all of you to leave the call now and wish you the very best of luck going forward. Thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And over to our judges when everybody has left the call. There we go. So judges, I think now you have the usual 5-10 minutes to do your feedback on that fifth presentation. And then you also have, you'll probably be pleased to know by now, because it's been a long stretch, you have a break for lunch. So I think we will resume with the next presentation at 1:15 your time, but we will start letting the next team in shortly after 1 o'clock, I imagine.
Thank you. Have a nice, maybe not lunch, dinner, whatever time it
Yeah.
is.
Exactly. Thanks,
Whatever
Scott.
you
Enjoy
do.
your lunch. Thank you.
Thank you.